welcome to the special coverage we are calling the Buffett Trail. The event is done. It's over. The Berkshire Hathaway Annual Shareholders Meeting 2017 is something that we covered very closely right here in the homeland of the Oracle of Omaha. Mr. Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger spoke for 6 hours with shareholders at length on all the topics that we were expecting them to be candid on. I have an esteemed panel with me right here in Omaha to talk about what they took away from this big event and what it really means for an ever-evolving investment philosophy in the markets. Of course, Mr. Ramdev Agrawal is right here with me, and so is his team. I have Gautam Sinha Roy from Motilal Oswal Asset Management. We have Siddharth here. Mr. Sunil Mathani is here as well. And Vince also joins us to talk about the technology side of things, as he's a technology expert on the matter. But really, a very, very engaging 6-hour discussion, Mr. Agrawal. And I think the starting point of it is what Mr. Charlie Munger laid down as his as the philosophy that one needs to adopt in the current market environment. For me, just the statement that everybody's trying to be brilliant, but we are trying to be sane and rational, highlighted their approach and the reason why they are outperforming the market.
Yeah, so it came up right in the beginning about this particular statement that the world is trying to be brilliant, and yeah, so why it came up was that they are sitting on more than 100 billion, almost more than $100 billion of cash and cash equivalents in the balance sheet, and for many years that is the situation. So what do they want to do? So I think both the old people, they had this pressure of investing now, and he's saying that people are trying to be brilliant rather than speculative, and these two people at Berkshire Hathaway, they are trying to be sane and rational. And for investing, that is one of the best, that is the most that is the one characteristic which is required, and that is that's what is their overarching theme across the investing in capital allocation of Berkshire Hathaway.
Okay. Sunil, do you want to comment on that as well? How did you see the discussion today? In what light, and how that influences your investment philosophy?
Sure. So I've been coming for this meeting for many years now with Ramdev and with some other close friends. I think this is my 20th year that I'm here. And much of what you hear every year is just an echo of what you've heard in the past, but certain points always seem to stand out and stick in your head. One of the most remarkable things I think about these guys, and that was reinforced today, is the fact that they really believe, and they've demonstrated, that you can run a company honestly with integrity and still do well. Because everyone is tempted to cut corners, to take shortcuts, to do things that might get you a short-term objective sooner. But the fact that they've built this massive empire and of such fame and credibility is just a tremendous demonstration to me of the fact that you can do well by doing good. And that is really important. A second one is, Munger a couple of times said that he's impressed that Buffett bought Apple stock. Now when it first came out that he bought the stock a few months ago, I was surprised because he's not a technology guy, and I have some misgivings about what Apple's long-term future given its dependence on the iPhone. But clearly Buffett did at least some research and homework and concluded that this would be a good investment. And the interesting thing is that he's 86 years old now. He's still willing to adapt his thinking and change his mind. And another example is he went back into the airlines, which he had earlier said that he was going to avoid forever. So I think that the lesson to us is, it is a constant learning process. Life is all about constantly learning, because the world changes and there's always more to learn.
Vince, what about your key takeaways from the event?
Yes, thank you. Besides the comments about the general transparency on their business, there were two things that truly impressed me today and are actually relevant, I think, for this community and for India. And one was a comment earlier, a question that was asked about self-driving cars and the impact on GEICO and on BASF. And it will have a major impact. It's a technological innovation that will have massive change in those industries. And then later at the end, he was discussing artificial intelligence and what that may do. This ties with several topics that I am very personally interested in and actually professionally related to, and that is the impact of technology on unemployment, as well as on the development of distribution of wealth. And Warren Buffett described that in what I thought was an extremely interesting mental exercise at the end. He said, imagine in the U.S. that someone could push a button and produce all of the basic needs required for the total population. That is an extreme thought, but it is, imagine, then Charlie challenged him, he said, well, imagine half of the people in the U.S. are not required to produce the basic needs that we have for our society. This type of technological will come in the U.S. And the reason why I think it's relevant, not only for me personally at Microsoft, but also very interesting for you, is two things. First is that a lot of the productivity growth, there's a number of discussions, an interesting book about rise and fall of the growth of American growth, talking about the development of the U.S. since the 19th century, which is basically related to the infrastructure of water systems and electricity and roads, which is all in front of India. And secondly, if you're dealing with the situation of structural unemployment, where someone can push a button and produce it, how do you distribute resources? Well, you need identity systems and bank accounts and potentially discussions of universal basic income, which, by the way, are all being done in India, way ahead of the U.S. I have to say I'm envious of you. You have two structural waves in front of you. One is the basic infrastructure, and second is you have a wise enough government that's already moving ahead with the infrastructure, well ahead of any other nation in the world in terms of things like identity systems and UBI discussions. I am impressed.
Yes, most definitely. Okay, let's start off with some of the key highlights in the discussion, and the one that stood out was, of course, his own opinion on active versus passive investing, and that's very important for the entire Motilal Oswal team, which is down here, because they derive a lot from Mr. Warren Buffett's investment philosophy. Gautam, what did you take away from from the debate? He, of course, gave due credit to Jack Bogle and his contribution to the mutual fund industry, to the world of investing, but he is still talking about how in an efficient market, the need for active fund managers and their compensation needs to be reworked.
So the good part is that, he said what I believe in, that a good active investor is a very rare species or a specimen. And if he finds one, and he said that he has only found or spotted 12 of them in his entire life. So if he finds one, he is happy to pay them, in answer to the question that whether he will pay Charlie to bet 20. So that's the thing about this business, that it's a very right skewed outcome business, that there are very few people who are really good at it, who are very good at it over the long term. And but the funny part is, how do you spot them early on? If you can, then that compensation and fees is not an issue, because if you are delivering very high alpha, maybe 10% alpha, then why wouldn't investors pay 1%? So he clarified that. So his basic point was that, as a very ordinary lay investor, you are obviously better off with ETFs, which is absolutely true, because the active fund management as a community doesn't really do well, especially in the US. But it doesn't mean that there would never be outstanding managers who will really beat the index over long term. That's absolutely spot on. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. Mr. Agarwal, have you pointed to very good fund managers? Are you willing to pay them?
Sure. But I think another aspect of the same discussion was that how much money can be managed. Even if you have an alpha or you're an active manager successful, I mean, he was saying that managing beyond $100 billion effectively, if I understand correctly, I think it came up, will be very tough. So the volume will be enemy of performance. that also must be recognized, because this index thing is really sitting on the head of all the active managers, and that remains a threat. Once that active starts eating into once the passive starts eating into active, I think it is going to be a big problem. I think in US it got started just 2-3 years back, much more aggressively, and I've heard one estimate that by 2021 or 22, it will be more than 50% of the industry here, which is like $15-17 trillion, is going to be passive. So I think it's a huge trend which is right now on. Maybe it could at the end it might become even bigger than like 50%.
Yeah. No, but do you think India, Siddharth, is insulated from that for now? Because, we have a less efficient market in comparison to the US. And, I was reading about how there are a high percentage of funds outperforming the index by a huge margin in India. You manage, I believe, a multi-cap fund. So, with that sort of a combination as well, there's enough scope for outperforming with the right choice of stocks.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing, if you see, the US market or developed market is far more efficient, and the Indian market in that comparison is not that efficient till now. So that's the reason perhaps why we see that, there are, as a percentage, not many more funds, are able to beat the index. Going forward, I think, we in India still, it's still a growing market. If you look at it in terms of the total participation on the equity market, it's still very low. So I think we still have a long pathway ahead, and relatively it should be much easier to beat the index or give superior returns in a developing country like India, where the growth rates are significantly better, and it's within that, if you are selective, you will find some pockets which are growing much faster. So my sense would be that Indian markets has a long pathway ahead where you could continue to have this kind of a performance possible.
Right. But we are still seeing the growth of ETFs and money coming in through ETFs, in the Indian market. In fact, a lot of the volatility is attributed to all the capital coming via the passive route. Do you think that for any fund house, they would now have to strike a balance between keeping a fairly active portfolio but also getting in money and deploying it passively?
I think foreigners have a big role to play in this. I think last year or year before, bulk of the money in India has come through ETF route by the foreigners. So, and foreigners are like 20% of the total market right now. So they are a very big force in India. So what they do with the ETFs in India, whether it is Nifty ETF or BSE 500 ETF, that will have a huge role to play. So, but the domestics, like Indian institutions, some of the pension funds and employee pension funds, they are mandated to go 5-10%, 15% of their corpus by way of ETFs into the markets. So that's a very limited participation. But here in US, I think the whole, apart from the institutions, even the individuals are HNIs, institutions, family offices, they are resorting to allocation in ETFs. So that's a very different trend. Right now in India, we don't have that from the individuals participation into passive.
Right. Sunil, you want to comment on that? On the whole topic of seeking alpha, that a lot of investors would move towards perhaps emerging markets like India, either through the active or the passive route, but really be part of that market to seek out performance.
Right. I think that the trend towards ETFs is irreversible now, in part because of the success of Jack Bogle in conveying the story, and then Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger talking about it over and over again, and emphasizing the fact that high fees can really cut into performance. So in the US, it's clear that it'll continue going down the ETF path where a bigger and bigger portion of the market, as Ramdev said, at some point over 50% and perhaps a lot more. In India, I think that, and in other developing markets, I think that there's still a feeling that the markets are a lot less efficient because there are enough managers who fairly consistently outperform the market, that a fair chunk of the money will continue to go to active managers despite higher fees they charge, because people feel like it's worth it. If you can outperform by 5% after your fees, that's well worth it.
True. Okay, let's now talk about the two holdings that has the world up in a debate, IBM as well as Apple. I think I would sum up the one line that I think summed up the approach towards both these investments was when Mr. Buffett said, look, we made a mistake with IBM. Apple may not be, but we'll have to see.
I agree with the commentator. He did make a mistake, and in fact, 2 or 3 years ago, there was a discussion about why he did that. He was talking with IT managers of his portfolio companies, and those IT managers were using IBM, and he said, okay, they're using them. The problem with that is that 50% of IT budgets now worldwide are not owned by IT departments, but by the sales manager who says, I don't like IT, I want to do this other thing, or the marketing department. The lesson for us is that you have to be careful who you're asking for your information, because I think you got bad information, you made a decision that was wrong, and he's paying for it now. Of course, someone from Microsoft, I can have another, I'm biased here, but I clearly made a wrong decision. With Apple, he explained today, and he was more clear in his decision with Apple today than he was in IBM, or how he made a mistake with IBM, so I guess that's acceptable, is he was saying this is a consumer mout. This is a consumer product where there's clear preference for the experience, and I'm investing in that experience, even though I don't understand the technology. Which I guess you can debate whether he needs to understand the technology, but it's clearly a bend. So two different, and he says, these two decisions are not apples and apples or apples and oranges, and they were two different cases, but I think the lesson here is, number one, we do need to be careful who we're asking the question to, because we could be asking the wrong person. But secondly, in the case of Apple, you're asking, by asking the end user, which we at Microsoft also try to focus on, is you're focusing on the person who really has the money and paying, and is probably the better decision.
But doesn't that also, spark off the debate that, as Neil said, that he's accepted the fact that he's changing too, because the world has changed, and that he might be looking at more technology investments, because maybe his way of looking at it is not really that this is a technology company, but really what kind of value does it add to society. That's how he defined Apple, as a consumer company. I mean, I would say consumer tech, but that consumer angle is a bit influencing aspect.
Absolutely correct. There were two things that were very interesting today. Is number one, his focus on, yes, I recognize this is a consumer, and that is a product that has value, and therefore I want to invest in that franchise. Yeah. And secondly, there was a much larger discussion today of technology in general. For example, the admission that they had not gotten into Amazon or into Google. And it seems like they are recognizing, as we all are, that technology is a greater part of our GDP, of our general experience. And therefore, if you are willing to invest in the market, that has to be part of your portfolio.
Yeah. In fact, technology companies are the only ones that are investing for innovation. I mean, we were talking about that earlier on. He's also highlighted the fact that there might be a lot of companies who may have cash, especially the high growth companies, but they don't know what to do with that cash. There'll be a problem of plenty for them. Because redeployment options are kind of getting limited. So the only space one looks at then for seeking a high return on capital employed, or perhaps a high return on invested capital, would be companies like technology in the technology space or in other related sectors where there is scope for innovation.
Right. I remember about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe, at this meeting, Buffett was asked the question, if you could invest in some sector that you don't currently invest in, or what would you like to understand better? And he made the comment then that that technology was something he didn't understand, but because it is such a big sector and growing so rapidly, that he wished he understood it better. So it seems to me that he's clearly made the effort to try and shift his mindset to being more open to investing in what we call high-tech companies, Apple and IBM, and then they made the mention of they should have seen Google because they were earlier customers. And given that they're sitting on...
I wonder why he didn't mention Facebook.
He said he learned from his grandchildren about Apple and how sticky it is and how much they love it. And you try taking it away from them, and they're not happy. He could learn the same thing about Facebook maybe from them, because kids spend so much time on Facebook. There is something, it's clearly adding value to people's lives.
Yeah, actually, Yesterday, I met this investor. She's 87. I forget her name, but she's talking about how if she had a piece of advice for Mr. Buffett, she'd be like, why, or if she could tell him to have corrected a mistake in the past, and she'd be like, I would ask him to invest in Facebook. But Mr. Agarwal, you also highlighted the fact that this brings us down to how everything is now getting is depending on innovation and is drawing the benefits of technology from. So where does that lead to when it comes to companies deploying additional capital, because they're sitting on a lot of cash at this point?
One of the things we didn't realize was the top 5 companies in the world don't use any capital. So that observation that $2.5 trillion, just see the size of the capitalization, 700 billion, 500 billion, and they're all very young companies. So it has literally bypassed him. It has happened. They're like his grandchildren type. So it has bypassed all the generations, and now the world is right. You have to take notice of the most valuable companies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all of them are companies with all kinds of cash coming, and they have not used right from inception. It's about brilliant idea and exploiting the technology, prowess of the technology, whether it is Google, whether it is Microsoft, whether it is, I think Microsoft looks to be little capital employed kind of company. It is the old...
Ask Vince.
Now I think they are trying to, he is transitioning, but it's an old technology company. You have Amazon, you have Google, you have, what is the third one, Facebook. So they are all without any, so only about power of idea. So I think world has changed. That's the word he used. And even Manjar also said, the world has changed, and the capitalism, the way it was known, which was enhancement of capital. You allocate capital very well, and so if the capital is not being used for creating capital or creating market cap, I think this is a different game altogether. This stock market game is very different than what we know. In India, still we are more 90-95% is still in the old world, but I think the future, the kind of digital technology, digital world we are getting introduced in India also very rapidly. The message is very clear. Please take care of these, upcoming new companies which are right now private, whether it is a Flipkart, whether it is a, Ola, or there are Indian versions of this. And in fact, we might have completely new companies which are going to be brainchild of next generation, and it could be internet based. So I think the message is very clear that bigger wealth now is going to come from not old economic companies, even in India probably, but from the new economic companies.
Okay, I want to take that point up with Gautam and Siddharth, but you don't want to defend yourself. And, well, we know Microsoft has done well and continues to do so. Siddharth, you want to comment on that? Does that change the way one evaluates investments? For both of you, are you going to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, now this is, I need to draw up a new set of parameters on the basis of which I invest?
As investors, we always think internally that the perfect company is one with infinite ROIC, which doesn't need capital for growth. So he just reiterated that. And what example did Munger give? He gave the example of See's Candies. That's an old company, right? But it also doesn't need capital. It keeps growing. So that's always the ideal investment for us as minority investors. But the problem of capital allocation, what to do with the cash, maybe just distribute it, buy back shares. That's what Berkshire Buffett also hinted that he might have to do eventually with the 90 billion plus of surplus that he has and limited deployment opportunities.
Siddharth, you want to come on that?
Yeah, so I think if you were to summarize whatever observations they were making, they were coming back to the same point that end of the day you have to invest in companies which have moats. And they talked about wider moats and widening moats. So I don't think in terms of investment style or anything major has changed. It's maybe their perspective where they had closed down their eyes on particular areas. There also, if you listen to his argument on Apple, it's again coming back to the same thing, that there's a consumer franchise there, and he's viewing it very much in the way he would view any other company in terms of identifying moat and why it should be possible to make sustainable value creation there.
I have a larger point here. Is technology killing the traditional capex cycle, so to speak, Sunil? Now people are looking at ways to use technology to bring down costs. Very seldom do I hear about expansion. and I know Mr. Agarwal made the point about old age businesses still perhaps adopting or needing to deploy capital, but I think that also will phase out over a matter of, it's only a matter of time.
I don't know if that's right, because most things that are manufactured, most physical, tangible products, do require capital to be made. The clothes we wear and all the products here and food, those will never be, I think, for the most part, industries that are not capital intensive. So the new economy, which is a lot of services, will be that way, but not the old economy, I think. I think there'll always be a need for capital. And in the case of in India, where you need huge amounts spent on infrastructure, you're going to need trillions in capital over time.